clicked on go live, and we're going to give it a few seconds to check if the stream is as we want it to be. And yeah, I'm getting a good signal, so I think we're good to go. Hi everyone, welcome to Grift. I feel like I think many people feel like it's a revolutionary moment for Polkadot. What we want to make sure with this call today is we want to make sure it's an evolutionary moment for Polkadot. So we don't want to turn things around just for the sake of turning things around. We want to make sure that all of the energy that is here in the room right now is directed in the right direction. And that is the evolution of Polkadot open governance to be more constructive and more professional. So we called it the Grift because we feel that this is the momentum and the feeling that people are having right now. There has been complaints for quite some time about grift happening in the ecosystem, money flowing into the wrong channels and money not flowing into the right channels. And I see quite a few people in the chat already. Hey, good to see you here. Co-host with me today is Cheaper. Hi, Cheaper.
Hello, good morning.
And so what we want today is we want to talk 30 minutes. We're going to keep it short. How did we get into the current situation? How does it fit into the bigger picture? So have a little bit of a discussion and zoom out, frame it all properly, and then show you the direction that we see about how should we reform OpenGov and what should we improve specifically. So we need our full focus and attention today to give you the best possible picture. And I would say with that we can start into it. What I see here on the side is the chat. So if you're chatting on YouTube, we will see it and we can react a little bit on it. This discussion today is big picture. So it is about OpenGov as a whole and how can we have a good and a professional governance. We will talk a little bit about marketing topics because they're interesting and they're sort of this igniting point for some of the discussion. But our interest really is to cover the whole picture of how we see OpenGov governance being executed. So the point where we want to start is with the recent Treasury report. So this is a Treasury report that we created, that we posted as OpenGov Watch, as this initiative to help make OpenGov better. And it was a pretty sophisticated report. So it showed where does the Polkadot Treasury hold its assets in terms of DOT, USDT, USDC, other assets. And it also showed what is the total income statement of Polkadot. So how much is Polkadot spending on different categories like outreach, development, stimulating the economy, in talent and education, operations and research. And what the report showed is that Polkadot spent, we see it in DOT, yeah, we see it in DOT here, but Polkadot essentially the Treasury spent 11 million DOT in half a year, which I think we summed it up was in total, if you calculated it by the point when it was paid out, it was like $80–90 million in value. So it created a lot of discussion because marketing was a very big spend and there is a very critical discussion, is the marketing spend being done properly or not? I think there's a lot of very rightful criticism. But in general, what should be the proper way to spend the money, right? So this is what ignited the discussion. And it created a lot of potential and energy within people to critically examine all the different things that Polkadot is spending money on. So what Polkadot is spending money on is direct spending, where specific proposals are being brought to OpenGov, and then there is an agreement, yes or no. And then there is bounties. And so bounties make up about, I think, 12–15% of total spending. And bounties are these social contracts where we say, we want, for example, money being spent on advertising, and we leave it to this group of people to determine what is the right way to spend. There might be a social contract attached to it, so a specific agreement made within OpenGov on how exactly the mode of spending should happen. Now, this critical examination led to quite a bit of dynamic that is currently happening and where bounties are critically examined. And I think the most prominent example we have recently is the marketing bounty, which is essentially focusing a lot on advertising. It's paying influencers, key opinion leaders, ads, billboard ads, some kinds of like platform integrations, digital ads, different forms of advertising. And the request here was for 500,000 DOT, which today is about $3 million. And for the first time, Chipa, correct me if I'm wrong, for the first time, this was rejected. So OpenGov said, no, we're not going to fund it. And it was a pretty close call, right? Now we can, if you go into a little bit of the discussion in a minute, we can ask what is OpenGov demanding? Is it completely rejecting this, or does it request some change? But yeah, we have also some other things. So there's another marketing bounty, the AMI bounty, which now is being threatened to being closed. And we have also another refill for the anti-scam team that is also not looking too good at the moment. It's only like 12.5% on the I side, and it already has 35 million DOT on the NA side, which is not gigantic, but it's like quite a bit of resistance to come up with, right? So the discussion right now is critical examination, a call for transparency, very closely looking at things, and like a situation really heating up and people starting to get into fights, which I think we can all agree on the big picture. We don't want people fighting. We want people to all be confronting the outer enemy, which is building a proper, flourishing, good, healthy Web3 ecosystem. And on the opposing side, what we see right now is people like having really harsh debates. So this is the how did we get here, and now we can get a little bit into the discussion. And maybe Chipa, handing the word to you, give us your first impressions about what relevant talking points we're having here.
So yeah, my comments will be more about like what happened yesterday on AMI bounty discussion, so more on the agenda rather than the big picture, like you summarized. So what I observe mainly, there are two, like one problem, one good, one bad thing. So I think the worst thing happened yesterday is this mob mentality, is this like lynching behavior. Because like, why is this happening? Because people are reacting to some like build hours, some specific spends that the bounty has made to its own curators. So basically people are reacting first, curators paying themselves, and second, why are they paying themselves? Like this sign up bonuses, this like build hours, like specific, like this Telegram chat messages, AAG, blah, blah, blah. But I think everyone should remind themselves that they can criticize these things because it's transparent. They can see it. Like if you can see it, of course, like I can agree. I think it should be discussed. Like if we should pay people to read Telegram or not. Some people can say yes, some people can say no. Some people make fun of it, but it can be discussed. It should be discussed. But we should not lynch people because of this. Because if you do that, then the next thing you will see is nothing. You will see an opaque structure. For example, Events Bounty is paying $4,000 per month to its curators. I'm not criticizing it. It is possible. Like if they're doing a good job, if they're doing a really good job, because you need to know you need to have certain qualities to curate these bounties, to do these jobs. And it is okay to pay. It is too much for me, for my taste, but it's okay. I can understand. It can be discussed, but you don't know, they are not reporting hours, right? They are not, you don't know what, and some part of this job is reading Telegram. Some part of this job, and you don't have to read that Telegram messages. Like this is a time you can spend with your family. And if you are doing it just for the job that you are responsible to, then you can bill it. It's like, I understand people are getting mad because it says like 45 minutes of reading Telegram messages. I understand it's funny, but it might be a burden for some people. It might be fun for some people. For me, it's fun mostly. I do it for fun, but sometimes I do it for work. So it is understandable for me. I know a lot of people won't like to hear this, but we should remember this is because of transparency. And if you are lynching transparent people, then what you will get is non-transparent people.
Yeah.
So
I think what we can say is that we should not punish transparency per se. We should reward transparency, right? And it's easier to lash out at a bounty where it's very transparent what people are doing versus a bounty where they're not even disclosing what they're doing and you just see a total number of what people are asking for. But what it throws up, if you have transparency, suddenly you can have a discussion about effectiveness and efficiency. And maybe suddenly you say, this is not efficient, this should not happen, or why is this person being paid for this and that activity, right? So in a way, it's an evolutionary step to have transparency, but at the same time, it throws up all the questions that we also had when we published the transparency report, where suddenly people were saying, and maybe we used the wrong word of runway, but people are now saying, look at all those numbers, look at all the spending, right?
yeah, and
So I think maybe to summarize, we should measure everything equally. And when we develop certain standards of measurement, of measuring performance and work, we should apply it to everyone. And we should also look at the bounties that might not be as transparent and say, okay, now can we see this in the same way? Or, define, do we pay per hours worked or do we pay based on specific results?
yeah, and this is another very important topic. So people are discussing this so all the drama yesterday happened because these bounty curators paid themselves $18,000. I ran the numbers and it was $18,000. I'm not saying it's low. It's too much. For me, it's too much money. $18,000 is too much money for me. And I think it should be fixed. If there's a problem, it should be fixed. Definitely. But at the same time, we also need to consider hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent. There are some bounties are paying much more than this for the administrative task, $5,000 per month for. I don't want to name names, but if you look into this, it's not that hard. There are 10 bounties, and we are publishing reports. A lot of people are publishing reports about this. If you look into it, you will see a lot of spends that you don't know what they're doing, completely opaque spends. And they are also admin tasks, so they are billing by the hour in principle, but you don't know what they are doing on those hours because it's just two sentences. So I would say, yes, criticize this as well without lynching, but criticize it, ask questions, but maybe also ask questions to bigger spends. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, and so maybe if we zoom out a little, we discussed this current situation a bit, but if we zoom out a little bit, I think the big picture that we're seeing is that we need OpenGov to develop, right? And all of us were thrown, let's say, pretty harshly into the situation of previously we had council governance, and then we're going into OpenGov. And no one here is educated in how to do politics, how to run a hundreds of millions of dollars treasury. How do we work with people that are mostly volunteers or people that are transitioning from being volunteers to being paid? We don't have the structures to screen people. We don't have the structures to audit people. We don't have controlling structures. And so we're essentially, as an ecosystem, tasked to build all those things at the same time. And we have to go through different phases of, on Kusama we saw extreme conservatism initially. Now we see extreme laissez-faire politics of throwing money at things and then see if they sort themselves out. And so we're going into these different problems, and then we say, okay, we don't want that, we want something different now. And what we have to avoid is just going back and forth between different extremes. What the best outcome would be is if we go into this one extreme, and then we go into this other extreme, and we say, okay, now we learned these lessons. Can we build a synthesis out of these things that give us the best of both worlds, or the best of all the available options? So our challenge in the bigger picture is to evolve to a level where we can clearly determine what is good and bad about a certain model, council governance, what is good and bad about the current OpenGov, and then see how can we construct a better model, right? And this would also lead us over not right now, but maybe in a minute, into this discussion of how should we reform OpenGov or how should we structure OpenGov in the future. Cheaper. Moving on. I see that we can also touch on these flags here, and then we can go to the next thing, and I'm going to read up on chat. Any closing comments for this section?
No, I want to talk about a little about the new bounty structure we are proposing.
Right.
And it's on the next one. But about fixing marketing, so this is what I also observed. It's like this two biggest drama. The one before this one was KOL, and it was like for millions of dollars. And it was also about the marketing bounty. So this one is another marketing bounty, and this is not millions, not even hundreds, but this is like $20,000. But it's still the marketing bounty. So I think it shows us this like a common denominator on all this drama, and it's marketing. And it seems to me like we need to fix marketing before moving on. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So, Chipa, you and I were discussing today, and we were asking, okay, what is the current feeling? What is the current emotion that we see? And I think this notion of grifting has been around for quite some time. But right now, this is, I think, one of the most dominant notions is like, at the moment, there is like just too much that we see that is not going right and that we want to correct. This is on the one side, and this affects like many different areas of OpenGov where you can see those dynamics happening. So it's like, let's say it's one form of corruption in a way, right? And what is the best antidote to corruption? We have like a basic recipe in a modern world, which is transparency, which is accountability, and which is a way for the leading entity to control the lower entity. And in this case, the leading entity is OpenGov, right? And then fixed marketing, my comment on this is we see two different approaches being taken. One where basically it's very laissez-faire, throw money at things, and then the other one which is very bureaucratic. And we can see advantages and disadvantages to both. But I think what is very clear for many people right now is that we need to find a synergy, or we need to find a model that is not too bureaucratic, but it's also not throwing money at the wrong things, right? Okay. Moving on to this chapter now, and we were gonna spend like roughly 15 minutes on this. And what we want to do here is lay out a picture, an image, a vision of how we see OpenGov being reformed. Maybe also draw a picture of how it is right now, but not everyone is aware. And maybe for this part, I'm gonna draw a bit more, and Chipa is also maybe gonna tell a little bit more. So I'm going to lead with a little bit, and then, Chipa, I'm going to invite you to talk about bounties because they are a very relevant part of how we're seeing this lived structure of OpenGov, right? So I'm gonna make a box here and allow us to draw a little bit, and I want to first draw OpenGov. The stakeholders, right? So they are on top of a certain hierarchy, and in this case, it's the hierarchy of OpenGov execution, right? And then below that, we have to, and this is sort of the executive structure. So OpenGov as a whole is making decisions about what it wants to happen. And then the question is, how do we execute those decisions? How do we bring them into reality? And so maybe let's call this chapter, this thing here, this is the executive structure, right? So we're legislative side, we're figuring out a little bit, but now the executive side, what we see is that there is different bounties. I think this is a bigger box here. So we have quite a few bounties, and then what we also have is collectives, right? And then we have some individual spends. So maybe while I draw these boxes, Chipa, there is an invitation to you to talk a little bit about, maybe give a big picture about bounties and then the specific things you wanted to talk about.
Maybe a couple words about the structure you are drawing.
Yeah.
So we have talked about this in our office hours before. I want to repeat them a little. So in the traditional government structures we are having right now, there is a concept called separation of powers, which separates execution, legislation, and jurisdiction, and judiciary. Sorry. and it's there for a reason. It's there. It's like the result of like hundreds of thousands of years of like political philosophy and like, this political practices. It's there for a reason. The reason is checks and balances. The reason is that we don't want one monarch. Like this is the reason that we evolved from feudalism to this democracy. Not only democracy, but this parliamentary structures. The reason is like execution and legislation should be able to check and balance between themselves. Like if there's a mistake on the execution, legislation can like prevent it or maybe like resolve the problem. And if you give all the powers to legislation, then there is no power structure to check it out. And you created a monarch out of the, even if it's like a parliamentary, even if it's like an open go, it's still, you need to separate, you still need to distribute the power. So this is why we are coming with this separation. So open go is like an assembly, it's the legislative power, and you have these bounty structures, these collectives like fellowship as executive bodies. What's on our mind, so what we think is like, you cannot, for example, if you are requesting money from your government for, let's say you're an Olympic sports player and you want to go to the Olympics to do something, you are not going to the assembly. You are not going to the assembly and ask for funds. You are going to your sports ministry to ask for funds. This is like the events bounty. This is like the marketing bounty we have. But right now we are voting for everything. We are voting like four, five different proposals every day, even for like $5,000 small tippers. This is not the job of the assembly. People should go to the executive bodies, people should go to the bounties, and the assembly should check the bounties and define what's going to be spent on whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I figured it took me some time to figure this out, but we're gonna do this like this. Red. Let's say red is a bounty. Sorry for taking some time. And then we give a different color. Then we give, I don't know, we give blue to a teams. And then, for example, we have Evan Thomas. We have Distractive. These are teams that are working in a certain space, right? So I think what we're seeing here is that we're building out these clusters of people and teams that work in the same area, and so what we're seeing here in terms of these executive structures is that we are fulfilling this function of having decentralization here, in terms of there is no one is making the universal calls of how things should happen, right? But we're having teams working together in the same area with the idea that together they benefit the whole thing. So how I see this is, if I want to map this into traditional structures, because we have traditional functions, it's not as easy because it's more dynamic and fluid. But we have some of those structures, right? It's just we're on live right now, and this is where I have a hard time remembering things. But different problems that we're solving, for example, in the era of development is user experience, developer experience. We have people active, for example, in economic matters. And so in economic matters, it's, for example, the question of where do we provide liquidity? Where do we provide liquidity incentives? And so we can have a little bit of this traditional way of thinking. And then now some people get scared and said, no, we should not do it in the traditional ways. We should not do it in the traditional ways if it is creating problems for us. If it is benefiting us in some ways, then we should do it. So the thing that we should definitely observe in a traditional way, and maybe this is, I don't know which box this fits, but let me take some notes here. We should embrace decentralization. We should embrace bottom-up. Then we should recognize that OpenGov leads the whole thing. So OpenGov is the leader. And what we want OpenGov to have is to make, as Chipa you just explained, to make as little micromanagement as possible. We don't want OpenGov to decide everything. We want OpenGov to give very clear directions to, OpenGov thinks this should happen in marketing, this should happen in development, this should happen in terms of economic activities or research or operations or talent. And it should give clear directions about what it wants to achieve. And then those structures here, those people here, they can figure out how the job needs to be done, what projects need to be implemented, and how much money is needed, and what other kinds of resources are needed. Is certain technology needed? Does marketing maybe need something from the development department? Does marketing maybe think it's a good idea if there's liquidity injected somewhere? And so on. So all of these areas can influence each other. But the idea is, if we think about this more like departments, but they're locally decentralized, maybe a bit more chaotic, but they can also handle more load. These are more independent people. We can say OpenGov gives instructions. And then we have structures, we could call them maybe sub-DAOs. And these are, for example, bounties, these are collectives. They have the professionals. They operate the whole thing. They can be replaced if they're performing bad, or funding is being rejected for them, as we see right now. And I think the important takeaway here is that there is structure, right? If you just look at PokeAssembly or Subsquare, you just see a range of proposals and referenda, and so you see discussions everywhere, which can give you the impression that everything is chaotic. But we clearly see that this is not the case if we dive a little bit deeper. And I think what we realized in the recent days and maybe weeks is that maybe this structure that is already there is not as visible to people as we need to make it. So I think our job right now is to create more clarity on the overall structure and let people know how this whole thing looks like. And this is an area we should work towards too. Okay.
Before we finish, I want to talk about the bounty structure we are envisioning a little, if that's possible.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I wrote this, like, if you go a little bit, yeah. So in the bounty structure we are thinking, which should happen, is that, okay, let me try to, so we are trying to create this UX bounty, and it is more about shaping a universal bounty structure, not only about UX, but trying to apply a universal structure for all the bounties, which will also be created in the future. So what we are trying to do here, like having one designated bounty operator, which is paid full-time and not a curator. So technically they are curator in the UX bounty, but they are not voting. They are just curators because to deal with the multi-sig operations, but they don't have curation powers. So this overcomes the problem of curators paying themselves, because in this case, curators will be paying for a bounty operator, which is not a curator. So this is actually the same thing we are trying with OpenGo by these, like, separating this legislation and execution. Again, we are separating curators and executors. The second thing, so they have full-time payment, they are separate from the curators. The third thing is we need standardized reporting from all the bounties. For example, when we were doing this treasury report, I had to categorize each child bounty for the marketing bounty, categorize each child bounty by looking into, like, specific invoices and trying to figure out, oh, what does this invoice paying for advertisement, or is it like digital marketing, whatever. So we cannot deal, like, OpenGo itself cannot deal with child bounties. It cannot deal with, like, quality assurance of each child bounty paid. Mm-hmm. This is the job of bounty executor, and that's why we need to pay them full-time salary. So bounty executors should be like responsible for reporting what's happening, should be responsible for, like, Q&A. This is also a curator job in a way, but mainly the executor. So standardized reporting, we need it. And time budgets, like, we need bounties to define the time they need the money for. For example, you are asking for $2 million of that. You need to say that I want this for 1 year. This is my rough targets or whatever. It's it's unsustainable to have like, oh, we are out of money, give us 5,100 more. Oh, we are out of money, give us 1 million more. This is unsustainable. We need like timed budgets, like specifically designated for 6 months, 1 year, whatever. But yeah, basically these are, I think, what should happen on bounties.
Yeah, absolutely. One example that we can show is, for example, the Polkadot Assurance Legion today just published a report. So they published a transparency report. And I think this is just a general call to action to all bounties, and I think they will come under pressure from OpenGov itself to create better ways to publish transparency pages. So maybe as a first act today, we started this column today is a transparency page column. And what we're going to do is we're going to click this link and we're going to add it into our sheet here. And we're going to fill up this sheet. Do we have assurance? Yeah. We're going to fill up the sheet here with all the transparency pages that will reach us. And I think the thing that we can do is we can apply some pressure by asking, hey, where is your transparency page? And then fill this up so that for every bounty we have a transparency page and everyone can start looking into these things. One good discussion point that we just had here, maybe we leave it up to bounty, to community auditors to look into certain stuff. Maybe there is also place for audit bounty or controlling bounty to look into stuff, right? So this is a discussion that we also had recently. And with that, we gave you a little bit food for thought. I would say this is not the only show of this format. I think what we should do is like regularly go deeper into this conversation. So the thing that we started fleshing out today, go deeper into this conversation, have a bigger conversation about how do we want to structure OpenGov. Because all of this is not our invention. We're just curating all the discussions that are happening in the space. And so it's an ongoing discussion. It's really great to read what's happening in the chat here today. I want to close with two things here. Number one is the Polkadot strategy. I want to shield this for like a minute or two, and then the action items that we see of things that we need to do right now. So this is a thing that I want all of you to be aware. Let's hide my thing here. So this is a document that we call the strategy, and it is the result of many conversations. And basically, what it does is it summarizes the state of the ecosystem. It contains a list of all the problems that anyone ever mentioned about Polkadot, most of the problems, and it structures them into different clusters. And then out of that, we have distilled those objectives. And these are, if you hear any idea about how to make Polkadot better, it typically falls under one of those categories. So these are sort of the bottlenecks where if we fix those issues, they would unlock a lot of creative energy within ecosystem. And so these are typically in the order in which they're mentioned or how pressing they are seem to us. It's a curated list, so it's our personal bias that is applied here. Improve the developer experience. For example, Solana is very successful because they are said to have a great developer experience. With great developer experience come developers, with developers come apps, with apps come great things that can be used. And with that comes users, and with that comes money. So you can always argue, and we drew this up in a graphic of like what point in the whole conversation is starting the thing. Developer experience is one of the critical things, I believe. Improve the user experience, improve the narrative and public perception of Polkadot, establish better business development infrastructure, increase the liquidity, and what we have here, improve accountability in OpenGov. So you see this call today is one of those initiatives to improve accountability in OpenGov. And a lot of great people are working in the ecosystem to make all of these happen, and this is our structure to make it happen. And we talked a little bit about the process of today. So my invitation to you is visit opengov.watch. And on opengov.watch, you have a link here to the strategy. So you can immediately look into the strategy and give us your criticism or learn more or give some feedback. And with that, I want to close it down. And I think I want to close it down today with 3 action items. So these are the 3 big things which I believe, and I think we believe, need to happen to make things better right now. And this is... And we hope to achieve this with this call today. We want to bring more clarity into the structure and the processes, and we want to develop the structure and the processes. This means, for example, if someone is making a proposal in OpenGov and you say, you're proposing a lending palette, how about you go to the DeFi and tooling bounty and discuss it with them first, because they are the DeFi and tooling experts and they can advise you if this is something that would be maybe worth financing from them. And this is a continual discussion where if more people of us are involved and say, hey, go to this bounty, we increase the likelihood of everything landing at the right point in the ecosystem and all of us having less work to do and having more focused time to work. We need more whales in the whole game. We need more whales that are supporting this thing. And this is, I'm not a whale, I guess you're not a whale, cheaper. Maybe a whale is listening here right now. We need the voices of whales being heard. Ideally, they are communicating and joining the conversation, or they are showing if they're happy and unhappy with a plan, and whales need to vote. Whales need to vote. All of this voluntary work and all of this even paid work that people are doing to improve OpenGov can only work, and the structure and process can only improve if whales are showing their approval, if whales are actively engaging with the whole story. And the last thing is we need a process to recruit competent people and raise up competent people, educate them, and help them getting better in project management, help them get in program management, help them understand Polkadot better, like educate people so that we have more people available to manage bounties, to manage collectives, and to do all the work that some people do not enjoy to do, but others do, right? And I think these are our 3 call to actions for today. I think I'm done. Cheaper, any closing words from your side?
No, I was engaging on chat, so I think everything is fine. I said all the things that I wanted to say, mainly, and I think you are also.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. I think we're finishing on time. It's very nice to see that engagement in the chat today. So with that, I really want to say thank you. I think we're going to continue this. And I wish all of you a good weekend. See you next week. And I strongly believe that together we can make this better. We can anti-grift. We can fix the current problems that we have in marketing. And we can really establish solid governance for the Polkadot ecosystem. And with that, I'm going to end it. And I wish all of you a great weekend. And goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.